Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Help in Real Time on this Thursday, Friday Eve. Woohoo! And today we have with us the experts from Leadership Techniques, LLC, out of Frederick, Maryland, who are here today to share some tips for dispersed teams. And I'm very excited to hear what they have to say. So let's take it away.
Thank you so much, Dina. We appreciate that. We're excited to be here. And I'm Lisa Hammer, and with me is my co-presenter,
Dave Newman.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on and how we deal with it. So in the past, we used to have something we called, the way of working. Well, this is what we call the new normal. And everybody's saying, I'm so sick of that term, the new normal, because is that really going to be normal? Well, you know what? It may be for a while. So what we'd like to think about is, how do things change? What are we doing now differently? And one of the things that we encourage businesses to do is to stay in touch with your employees. In fact, communication should increase. And when we say that, people go, oh my gosh, really? Absolutely. We need to communicate with people more than we have in the past. So we need to figure out what that means. Now, doing calls like we are now, the Zoom calls, or you see that picture that was a training class we did last week. It's great to see everybody's face so you can actually see one another, have the facial expressions, the body language. So that's really useful. And have them scheduled. So let's say you decide every day at 3 o'clock, you'll do a check-in call. Have that on a regular basis and also be accessible. A lot of people who are home are just feeling isolated. Even if they have kids around, even if they have spouses around, they're isolated from their cohorts. They're isolated from the work they used to do. So do what you can to be connected. And it does often mean communicate more than you used to in the past. And make it feel natural. Don't make it feel forced. But something like this where we're on the call and we see one another and we could see each other nodding our heads or smiling, it's a lot different than just using the phone. So we encourage people when we're doing presentations, when we teach classes, turn on your video. Nobody cares if you got your hair done or if you put on, a clean sweatshirt that day. We won't know that.
The new normal does bring about some new questions. And so Lisa and I had to come up to speed on this very quickly, as we're sure many of you did as well. Lisa and I have actually been teaching together now as Leadership Techniques for 10 years. Our very first class was May 6th, 2010. And we have spent the last 10 years telling people, we're not virtual trainers. We are in-person people. We like being with the people. We like the interaction. We like the face-to-face conversations and the ability to read the emotions of the room. And about 2 months ago, we found ourselves suddenly becoming virtual trainers and learning all about these new questions. So Lisa and I, in order to become comfortable with it, we clearly don't live together. We're business partners. We live on the opposite sides of Frederick, Maryland. But we Zoom every day with each other. We Zoom at 7:30 every morning. We Zoom at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we Zoom at lunchtime. And that is to help us be very comfortable with the technology. We have gotten so used to it over the last couple of months now that it almost feels like we're in the same room. There were some questions that we had to get past when we first started studying how to convert your training from in-person to online and those things. And some of those things are like, are our users, the people that we're working with, is our team or our stakeholders, our customers, are they tech savvy? Or are they, they've been pushing it off, sort of like I was. I didn't want to do virtual training. Now that we're doing it, I kind of like it. But are they going to be comfortable with it, right? And what we need to do is make sure that we can help people get comfortable with it. Let them experiment and play with the controls in whatever technology you're using. Are they going to even accept it? Lisa mentioned turning the camera on and off. Not everybody is comfortable with being on camera. It takes, in my experience, it takes a little bit of getting used to. And so sometimes it takes longer, and we need to practice some patience with letting people get used to things. Of course, the basic questions of access and security, I'm sure you've all heard about the initial problems that were well publicized, very publicized, I should say, about Zoom bombing. And Zoom has implemented some security measures that allow us to have very tight control over security. And they are, in fact, updating their encryption at the end of the month to hopefully get into other firewalls, stricter firewalls. And then over here in my house, my wife works for an accounting firm, and so she was furloughed at the beginning of Corona. And then a few weeks into it, they brought over a ton of equipment and said, here you go, you can work at home now. So for us, that meant it wasn't a wireless computer. So for us, that meant we have to run a long cable from the modem, which is down by our, where the telecom comes into the house, up through the hallway into the dining room, which is where she's working. So that's okay. There's an ugly cable running around the house for a few weeks. But the real question was the bandwidth. Are we going to have the bandwidth with our internet service to allow her to be speaking with clients and doing the things that they do? And then Lisa and I might be in the middle of a presentation. We can't afford to have a bandwidth issue. We can't afford to have these meetings freezing up while we're doing things like this. So we had to do a few calculations and a few tests and make sure that if one person was doing something, the other person wasn't going to get messed up. And of course, for those of you that are have people doing gaming and video streaming and a couple or three people doing work in the house, those bandwidth questions, you're going to want to pay attention to ahead of time before it becomes an issue for you. Just like in any other engagement conversation, there are typically 4 levels of conversation: small talk, then up through, sort of fact disclosure. Lisa is very good at small talk. I'm not big on small talk myself. And so that leads us in a way, partly in a way, to our division of work. We're only a 2-person company. So the division of work is that Lisa does a lot of the communication with clients and I do a lot of the other work that needs to be done. And the reason for that, part of the reason for that is because if you ask Lisa, or if you and Lisa have a conversation, it's going to begin with, hey, how are you? How you doing? Where are you? What's the weather like where you are? And all those sorts of things. I'm going to begin with, the agenda for this meeting is, and so sometimes that small talk can really help to ease the situation. And it's especially important when we're getting used to talking via technology rather than in person, because that adds a whole new layer of getting comfortable with being in the conversation at all. The other end of that spectrum, all the way up at emotions and personal feelings, make sure that you're not too far ahead of yourselves in the relationship, right? Make sure that you're at a point in the relationship where talking about emotional aspects of your life and personal feelings are appropriate and comfortable, right? And so these are sort of the levels that we can go up through. What's important for us, especially as frontline leaders and leaders in our communities, is to make sure we understand where we are in that relationship, and to understand that if your communication is changing, the method of communication is changing, then that level of conversation may have to take a step back. Your relationship may have to go back just a little bit to reform, right? To reestablish that connection so that the technology doesn't become a communication barrier.
And speaking of communication, if you have any questions as we go through, don't hesitate to jump in and ask. We're happy to answer any questions. But this next slide we want to talk about, we say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And we can't emphasize that enough. The way we say things means so much. We could say the same sentence 3 different ways and it would come across differently. For example, I'm going to say the sentence, I didn't say you were wrong. And each time I'm going to emphasize a different word. So the first time I'll emphasize I didn't say you were wrong. Now I'll emphasize say. I didn't say you were wrong. And now I'll emphasize wrong. I didn't say you were wrong. So you see, each time, the first time it's like, I didn't say you were wrong, Dave did. Or I didn't say you were wrong, but I suggested it. I didn't say you were wrong, but you're not right. So just the way we say things and where we emphasize it, the tone of our voice means so much. We always tell people to speak with a smile. because people can hear a smile in your voice. And even when you're on the telephone, try and have a smile. And sometimes people think, my colleagues will think I'm crazy if they walk by and see me on the phone smiling. But it really warms up your voice, and it's really a good thing to do. We also want to think about how we stress words. You've all heard the speaker who is just so monotone, and every word that they say comes out the same way, and there's no inflection, and it sounds like this the whole time. When you hear that, you just go, oh my goodness gracious, have some emotion. So we want to think about that. We also often speak too quickly. We could slow down our voice a little bit and it would be just fine. We tend to speak very quickly because we think that maybe if we speak quicker, it'll get over with faster, or we could just get done quicker. But sometimes the reality is people aren't hearing what you're saying. And especially if you're giving people information, they need time to jot things down. So we can all slow down quite a bit, and it still would not be one of those awkward pauses that we feel like it is. We need to think about the volume that we have. We want to make sure we're at a volume where people aren't straining. I used to work with somebody who was what I call, I think it's from a Seinfeld episode, an inward talker. So she talked like this the whole time, and you really had to listen very carefully. It was so annoying. So think about the volume of the way you talk. And then, of course, we want to think about the way we pronounce things and our enunciation. If you listen to singers, sometimes they over-enunciate certain syllables because they want to make sure they're heard. So we should do that as well when we're speaking. And sometimes we have accents that people aren't comfortable with. So think about that and think about how we could help. Dave, as you probably heard, has a very heavy accent. He's from New England. So yeah, don't put up that cup, Dave. Don't put up that cup. Oh no, you just turned everybody off. That's the New England Patriots. They don't like that. Um, but I actually grew up in New York. And I know, go ahead, Dina.
I just said go Ravens.
That's what I figured you would say.
That is appropriate.
So I grew up in New York, and I really had a heavy New York accent. I was from Long Island. And when I came down to the University of Maryland, which is what brought me down here, I think people, as soon as I said hello, they said, oh, you're from New York. I mean, all I said was hello. And they go, oh, you're from New York. And I thought, I've got to get rid of this accent. And truth be told, I think I worked harder on getting rid of the accent than I did on my education. But I did work really hard and tried to get rid of that New York, 33rd and 3rd type accent. And then when I graduated from college, I was a 6th grade school teacher. And I remember the first time I was in front of the classroom giving a spelling test. And I said, one of the words, you say the word, you use it in a sentence, and you say it again. And I said, the word is torch. She taught the class. And I went home that night, and I'm grading papers, and everybody is spelling T-O-R-T, T-O-R-T. And I'm like, we didn't talk about pie. Why is everybody writing T-O-R-T? And then I realized, oh, taught. She taught the class. And I thought, okay, well, that tells me right here, I've got to work on that accent. So I did. But, sometimes we do speak differently than other people, and we just need to think about how we come across. So absolutely, that's something. But it is often not what you say, it's the way in which you say it. And it's not only the way in which you say it, but it's your body language as well. And I know that's not here on this slide, and you can't all see me, but if I was standing up or sitting with you and my arms were folded, what message is that giving you? What kind of things? Anybody have any ideas when you see someone with their arms folded?
But I disagree.
I disagree. I'm not open to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anything else?
I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not hearing what you're saying. I disagree. I'm closed off. I'm not committed. Sometimes it means I'm cold, but you know what the reality is? This is just super comfortable. That's all it is. It's comfort. But the fact is, we all have this perception that when somebody has their arms crossed, they're unapproachable, they're closed off, they're not attentive. So we need to think about the way we come across in our words and our non-words. Our non-verbal communication is just as important.
All right. So this is what we call the positivity cycle. And it's related it's relating these three areas of leadership: managing our stakeholders, engaging our stakeholders, both internal and external stakeholders, the way we communicate with them, the way we engage them in the work that we're doing. Performance management, managing continuously the performance of our employees and our teams so that they know how well they're doing, so that they can feel good about the great work that they're doing. Also, so that they know what direction that they need to move in terms of performance improvement and coaching. So the more we know about what is expected of us in terms of performance, the more engaged we become in the work. And that leads to employee engagement, over which we have lots and lots of influence if we're in any kind of a leadership position. And what Lisa and I have found over the years through our own experience in consulting and helping companies become more efficient, become more effective, helping employees become happier and less stressed, all of those things we do through our training. And employee engagement, employee happiness are a huge fundamental part of all of the training that we do. Employee engagement especially is an area that we have so much influence over, because we can impact employee engagement through the work that we assign, through the teams that we create, who works with whom, the hours that people have to work, the type of work they're doing, all of those things that impact employee engagement. And we find that when there's a good balance of these things, good communication going on, people understand what the expectations are, they understand their strengths, they feel recognized when they're doing a great job, they are engaged in the work, they're focused, they're attacking that work energetically and vigorously, right? They're absorbed when they're doing it. All of that leads to personal well-being and happiness. And we know through scientific studies that are done, and there are many, Professor Wright at Fordham studies happiness, University of California, Berkeley studies happiness, and they all publish results. We know through science that happy employees are more productive. And so Lisa and I, hope to help people become less stressed and happier by helping them be able to do their jobs better. And we want to do that because we want to help people be happy. What we tell frontline leaders out there is, if you're not the owner of the company, or you're not the CEO, well, then you have to sell the concept of employee happiness, okay? And the sales pitch for you to your boss is, if I can have happier employees, I will produce more and higher quality products and services. So that's the sell. That's what gets us the funding to invest in employee happiness and overall well-being.
Yep. So what we want to also make sure we do is set expectations. So make sure everybody knows what we're doing. And especially now with things changing, we want to make sure that everyone understands that, you know, we might have a policy of working at home. And what does that mean? How flexible are we? And then we also need to think about, what are we going to do when our business is open back up? Who comes back? What if some people aren't comfortable coming back? How do we do that? And should we have a telecommuting policy overall? And I think the answer is yes, because a lot of employees are finding that they can be just as productive at home. So when you say, okay, we all come back to the office, you may get the question, why? You know, certainly retailers and establishments that face to face with customers, sure, they need to be there. But there are other companies where people say, you know what, I work better from home. I don't know why I need to be there. So we need to be prepared, and we need to make sure that we set the proper expectations so that everybody knows what we'll be doing.
All right, now we want to talk about the 20-20-20 rule. This is becoming very widely publicized. We're trying to get as many people to understand this as possible. If you are working in front of a computer like I am right now, and every day I'm staring at computer screens, it is recommended that every 20 minutes we take a 20-second break and turn away from the computer and let our eyes travel out at least 20 feet. So relaxing your eyes, giving yourself a break from that can prevent eye strain and other types of strain. It's also recommended that you get up away from your computer once an hour or so, at least once an hour and walk around the house or the yard or whatever you can do. And and to know if you're experiencing eye strain or not, what we're showing right now is a solid black dot. So if you're seeing anything other than a solid black dot, you probably should look away from the screen. I was kidding. It's not a solid black dot. Okay, the role of the project manager. We want to talk about this a little bit because at the core of our existence, Lisa and I, is project management. We love project management. And we like to say we operate right at the intersection of project management and human resources. So we have certifications in both of those things. The reason is because we are both experienced project managers, and we do a lot of work in the area of project management. Project management consists of two very distinct skill sets. One of them is what is known as the hard skills. That's managing schedules and budgets and risk, and usually is done mathematically, those things. So they say they're the hard skills, not because they're difficult, but because they have hard and fast answers. When you have a math problem, you get an answer, you can check it by working backwards, and you know that that's the right answer to that math problem. Where the HR side comes into it is with the soft skills. The hard skills in project management lead us to what we need to manage. We can determine the variances from the plan, and we can focus in on where some of the challenges and issues might be. But how we manage those issues is through our soft skills. Our ability to communicate, to form relationships and sustain them and nurture them. Negotiation skills, all of those things are soft skills, and that's where we see those sort of HR-related skills coming into the picture. Well, over the last few years, the role of the project manager has changed substantially. And there's a reason why we're showing a male here, okay? It's to make the point. When I started in project management in the mid-90s, I have to put out a disclaimer. My first project manager was a woman. She impressed the heck out of me, but it was a very male-dominated role. Most of the project managers that were around back then were male. Most of the people in the STEM studies were male, and thank goodness that's changing now, right? But it's not only the gender that's changing, it's everything about the role of the project manager is changing. In fact, we are no longer the current paradigm of project management is that there is no longer a single project manager. There's a project management team. And the project management teams, and this comes out of a certain aspect of project management called Agile, but it is quickly disseminating into and sort of coming into play in all areas of project management. And that is that in the leadership team for projects, we need to understand the technical aspects. We need somebody who can clear the technical roadblocks, but we also need someone who is business savvy. We need someone who understands the benefits of this project. Why is the organization producing this project? What's going to be the return on investment? How do we make sure that the goals of the project stay aligned with the strategic objectives of the organization? And there are two very distinct skill sets that are needed for that and backgrounds. And so the role of the project manager is splitting into a technical plus a business role. So usually that means more than one person. And it's also no longer a task assignment sort of a role. It's more of a servant leadership role. And servant leadership says that, well, a servant leader is distinguished from other types of leadership by what is the mindset of the leader. A servant leader will have in their mind service first. The top priority of a servant leader is the good of the people. So will the people be better off after having served after having worked under my leadership? Will they grow as a result of working on my team? Will they become better at what they do? And so servant leadership says, we're not going to so much be concerned about delegation and task assignment. What we're going to be concerned about is serving the needs of the team. And we want to make sure that we distinguish between serving the needs of the team and serving the wants of the team. People sometimes get concerned about servant leadership because they think they're going to become a floor mat, right? Just people are going to walk all over me because I'm just doing whatever they want. A servant leader doesn't necessarily do what they want. We do what they need. If they need discipline, if they need coaching, we provide that as well. Most people don't ask to be disciplined, right? But if that's what is needed, then it is the job of the leader to do that. So it works all ways, but what happens is our teams recognize that we genuinely have concern for them, we genuinely care about them, and we really do want to facilitate their efforts. The reason for our existence is to help them become better. And if we are truly servant leaders, it will be very quickly recognized by those whom we serve.
So we talk about conversations being difficult, and as we mentioned earlier, conversations are very important now. We need to keep in touch with people. We need to talk. So what makes a conversation difficult? Well, there's a few different things that can make a conversation difficult. First of all, there's emotions involved. So often when we're talking, we have a position. So we are emotional. We want to say something. I was thinking about this earlier today. I'm on a board. Dave and I both serve on various boards, and I'm on a board, and sometimes we get what the president likes to call passionate, because we have a strong feeling about something. We are passionate about it.
We all know what that means.
Yeah, passionate means I'm annoyed, but she says, I appreciate your passion. And I'm like, oh, that's a word, but I have another word for it. So we have to think about that. But often it's our emotions. Often we think about what are the consequences of a conversation. People take your words very seriously. Words matter, right? We always say words matter. We need to think about that. And then what if we want to disagree? Well, Dave and I always like to say that you can disagree without being disagreeable. And you can confront without being confrontational. So there's a way to do this. There's a way to have conversations respectfully and talk through things. As Dave mentioned, he and I have known each other 11 years, and we've been teaching together for 10, and we speak to each other all the time. And there's still times that we have conversations that get difficult because we do have those emotions involved and those disagreements, and that's okay. We don't want everyone to always agree with us because that would make things very boring. So it's good to come at things from a different perspective. We just have to make sure we do it appropriately.
One of the ways to keep the conversation from becoming confrontational is to use what we call the I message. So that is, make the conversation about yourself or at least not about the other person. So you can change a message such as, you were late for the meeting. It's accusatory. As soon as you say you did something, or I wish you wouldn't do that anymore. I am pointing my finger at the camera, but even if I don't point my finger, you can feel the finger pointing at you when you say, you're always late for meetings, right? Instead, we can turn it into the feelings. I feel disrespected when you don't come to meetings on time. Yeah, the customers yesterday felt that the whole audience didn't hear their message. They felt they would have felt more comfortable if you had been at the meeting from the start. Things like that. Try to get it away from the person, because as soon as we accuse people, they're going to become defensive, right? And then the conversation tends to escalate. So make it about the feelings, make it about the thing, not about the person themselves. And stay neutral. So using iMessages can help prevent putting people on the defense. Certainly let them talk. And we need to mention that I need to mention this because Lisa reminds me about it all the time, especially in an online world. Lisa and I just got done doing a 3-day class online for project management professional certification. And especially when I'm teaching math, I just start going and going and going. And what happens is when you're teaching online, if you don't take a breath once in a while, people can't talk. It's not like in class where, you can instantly see somebody make a motion or they just start talking and you hear them. Online, it's different. And so every once in a while, we have to stop talking and take a breath and make sure that there's not something that somebody wants to say. Let them talk, let them interrupt. And of course, there's no point in ever being condescending. That's not going to help anything. That is almost always going to escalate a conversation in a negative direction.
So we want to very quickly show you our engagement matrix. This is something Dave and I created a few years ago. And what this shows is that employees who have a high interest level and a high proficiency or a low, and where they are in the spectrum. So if someone has a high interest level, but they're not very good at their job, we say they probably need some training. If they are highly proficient at their job, but they're not interested, they may need some motivation. Maybe they were demotivated and we need to fix that. If we say that they're highly proficient, highly interested, we need to nurture them, and we'll talk about that in a second. But those folks that you see on the bottom left, not interested in their job and not good at it, we say fire them. Now, I don't know if those of you on the phone think that's a little bit harsh. Little nod, yeah, a little bit harsh. So we've softened it a little bit. We say we manage those people. Now, that doesn't mean we don't manage them out, but we may be managing them because we need to give them a chance. We need to figure out what's going on, right? So when I said earlier we want to nurture those in the top right, now you might say those are the great people. They're highly interested. They're really good at their job. Why should we need to nurture them? What do we usually do with those people up there? Any thoughts?
Let them do their thing.
We let them do their thing, absolutely. What else do we do with them? Any thoughts?
I think sometimes we kind of ignore them because we figure they're going to do what they need to do.
Yep, we ignore them, we let them do their thing. We often dump on them because they're our go-to people, right? They're our go-to people, so we often dump on them. They are the ones who we often just say, you know, oh, can you just do this? Oh, can you just do this? And then they're overwhelmed. So we need to be careful of that. We need to be careful of not dumping on those people because those are the people we don't want to leave. If those people leave our employment, we will really be upset. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. So take care of those people. Don't spend an inordinate amount of time with the lower left. And that's our message here. And that's what happens. We spend most of our time with our problem children, and then those that are doing really well, we ignore. And we don't give them the attention. We don't show them that they have a career path, that we have good things for them to do. We have a way forward for them. So we want to make sure that we pay attention to the folks up there. Now, this is something that Dave and I break down into mini quadrants. Each of these 4 boxes breaks down into 4 more boxes, and then each of those breaks into 4 more, so into micro quadrants. So we have this broken down into 64 boxes. And if you want to stay till 6 o'clock tonight, we'll be happy to continue going. No, that's a session for another day. But we do have break this down into 64 boxes that really gives you a roadmap as to how to manage your teams. So what we like to suggest with people is take this matrix that you see and go ahead and put it up on your wall and put push pins in where each of your team members are. Now, don't tell them who's which push pin, of course, but put them in where they fall, and then over time, move the push pins. And hopefully your push pins are moving to the top right. With any luck, that's the way you want them to move. But if they're not, you need to pay attention to that. And the other thing is, see where all your people are to start with. If they're all in the bottom left, you may want to reassess the team you're working with because it's not that easy to get people to move to the top right.
Let's make sure we choose our words wisely. This is especially important when we're online because we have much less of a chance to take it back. And so we need to make sure that we are choosing our words, thinking about what we're going to say, listening to what is being said very carefully, because it's much easier to hurt people's feelings when we're not in a face-to-face discussion. So even though we're here in Zoom and we can see each other, it's not quite as good or not quite as direct as being face-to-face. So just let's think about the words we use and make sure that that they're the right words, that they convey empathy, and that we are understanding the meaning of what we're saying. And we need to listen, especially during this time of Corona. We have such an important role as leaders to help people through this, to keep them engaged, to keep people positive, which means we ourselves need to stay engaged and positive. And it's especially important to be available now. And so we always talk about this in the office, not only having a physical door open, but, you know, symbolically, or in reality, I should say, the door is really open. So you're really available. We really want to help people. And so follow up with them and make sure that they understand that we're there to provide support. A lot of times we started this off with Lisa saying, you know, especially when you're working with a remote workforce, check in with them often, communicate more, increase your frequency of communication. And so what some of the feedback we get on that is that people get concerned then that they're going to be seen as micromanaging their team. And our answer to that, once again, is servant leadership. If we truly have the mindset of servant leadership, it will be recognized right away. And your team will recognize that you're checking in with them because you are concerned for their welfare, not because you're trying to get another status of whatever it is they're working on.
So sometimes being a leader is not such a fun thing to do, but we could really improve things and we could really win our teams over. And one of the things we could do now when we're working virtually that might make the leader smile instead of that sad frown face is what we can do is be a little flexible. So perhaps if we, that's happy manager. So if we could be a little bit flexible. Now, sometimes our teams can't be flexible. I mean, clearly, if they're working in a storefront, they need to be there certain hours. But if people are working from home and they say, you know what, from 12 to 2 every day, I need to take care of my children or my cats or whatever I'm doing, and then I'll work from 6 to 8 at night. If you have that flexibility, do that. Do what you can to let people know that you're thinking about them and their life, and it's not just all about what's important for the workplace. What's important for the workplace is critical, don't get me wrong, and you need to worry about your business. And so many people are going through such hardship in business. We absolutely understand that. But when you can be flexible and work with your employees, they're the ones who will be more loyal to you. And one of my favorite quotes is by Richard Branson, you know, from Virgin Airways. And he said, you know, when asked what is his most important asset, he said, my employees. And people said, your employees, your customers should be your most important asset. And he said, no, if I take care of my employees, they'll take care of my customers. And I think that's a model we should all, right, Dina? That's something we should all think about. If we take care of our employees will take care of our customers. So we also want to make sure that people are comfortable with the technology. As Dave mentioned earlier today, we want to make sure that we help them. Usually when we start training, we didn't have anyone new today on this, but when we start training, we often help people understand how to navigate Zoom, how to show your screen, how to look at the gallery view so we see what we call the Brady Bunch view so you could see everyone's face, how to ask a question, how to chat, do all those kinds of things. Another thing when Dave and I teach classes, now we don't usually do it for the 1-hour trainings, but when we teach classes, we do breakout rooms, we do polls, we do all kinds of things to break up the time and to get people engaged. So this morning we did a training with a group for a few hours. And after about a half an hour, we sent them all into breakout rooms to have a discussion and then come back and share. And that just not only gets some information going, but it really just forms some camaraderie, some needed time of networking and talking to one another. So that's always something we could do. So we're just wondering, for those of you on the phone, is there anything that you've thought of that you might want to think about adjusting with your communication style based on what we did? Is there anything we brought up that may make you think a little differently?
Yeah, I loved it when you talked about having to take a breath so somebody else has a chance to say something. Italian. And my mother, who was not Italian, was always afraid of the silence in a conversation. We always called her the fill in the blanker. And so I'm afraid that I have inherited a little bit of that, and I would do well to just shut up sometimes.
Well, everybody, just give
Me
someone the
too.
chance.
I just want to mention also, this is new for me in Zoom. I don't know if you've noticed, I talk with my hands a lot.
Yes, we've noticed.
Okay, well, I'm always, I'm always having to remember, no, you can't see my hands. I just look like I'm rocking and rolling, right? But
Oh,
I'm
no,
talking
we
with my
see
hands.
your hands. We
I
see.
got,
Crystal, did you have anything to add?
I don't. I've
Okay.
learned a lot, but yeah.
Okay.
awesome, that's cool.
All right, good. Yeah, so we just want to think about, how we could communicate better and just make people feel a little better about what's going on. So we always
Right.
want to thank people for listening to us, and
Yeah.
certainly our next slide will show you that we are happy to always be a resource if you have any questions or anything that we shared with you. As we mentioned, Dave and I spend most of our time in front of a classroom, figuratively or literally, but we do teaching on a wide variety of topics on leadership and project management. And we're always happy just to answer questions. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we could help you with or do for you.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
most importantly is stay safe and be well. And hopefully we'll all be okay and see each other in the next few months. So take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this. And you have given us a whole lot to think about, because there are some things that are just completely different when people are working remotely. And the whole idea of, you want to maintain that relationship and you want to continue to be engaged and in touch with people, but you don't want to cross the line of irritating them. And so I love the way you guys do it, that you schedule these conversations during it's going to be at 7:30 lunchtime and 5 o'clock.
Right.
And that way, when you're in there and you just save up the things you want to say, and you're going to get on at 5 and you'll be able to say them all. That's a really good way to manage that. And that's a very helpful tip.
Yeah, thanks. And, to reveal one more thing. So when Dave and I are not in the classroom, which is rare, but when we're not teaching and we're in the office together, we often have lunch together and we play backgammon. So we now do that online. So we've converted that. So you can convert those kinds of things as well. So it's not that difficult to do an online, backgammon game while we each eat lunch in our respective
And it is
homes.
very much the same as in person. She wins.